Welcome to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. Today, I want to ask you, whose map are you on? Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Kale Houser Leadership Secrets podcast. My name is Kale Houser, a co-founder of Kale Houser Leadership. Hey, I wanted to encourage you, if you have not, please visit kalehouserleadership.com. We have put up a new amazing free gift for you that I think, especially if you are the business owner or the person in charge of hiring in your company, we have put together a list of fantastic interview questions that you must be asking during your interview process, whether that's be for a dishwasher or a CFO, although probably for a CFO, you're going to want a little bit more in depth than these questions, but these are great starts and will get you a baseline of if this person that you are interviewing is a good fit for your company. So be sure you go to Kale Houser Leadership, throw in your email, and get that PDF sent to you as soon as possible. Our other websites are undergoing a revamp, so those in the coming weeks will be looking a little bit different. We've got some different things in the works that we're trying to get out and put out in market. So make sure you follow and subscribe to our email list so you get updated of things of that nature as they happen. But today I wanted to talk a little bit about this concept of whose map are you on? This came up from Jenna Kutcher. I'm sure most of you have heard of her. I didn't know this. Evidently, she has the #1 marketing-oriented podcast in the nation right now. Like where Joe Rogan is the #1 at what he does, she is the #1 at the marketing space. I have a theory about that, of why that is, but I will save that for another conversation. I was recently introduced to Jenna's world because she presented at Funnel Hacking Live. And while it was a fairly good presentation, she's definitely not my kind of person as far as, what she does and how she goes about doing it. And I am not her target audience. She definitely focuses a little bit more on the mom avatar than she does on somebody like me. But during her presentation, she made this really, really interesting observation and comment, because she was talking about, really kind of finding yourself and figuring out your purpose, because she went through her story and how she figured out her purpose and doing this marketing thing and how she came to write her books and things of that nature. But she made this comment of, maybe you haven't gotten to where you wanted to go because you're working off of someone else's map. Let me say it again. Maybe you haven't gotten to where you wanted to go because you're working off of someone else's map. And at first, this is like, oh, this is so stupid. It was kind of my initial thought. And then, as with most things, I take a step back and say, okay, what does this actually mean? What is she trying to say? And how is this applicable to my life? And I started thinking a little bit deeper. We all have these maps in our life. Some of them, especially at an early age, they are placed there for us. We are set on that map by virtue of who's raising you, who your parents are, the environment that you're put into, the school that you're put into, and then the random people that you get assigned to sit next to you in your classroom and the teacher that you get assigned to. Those are all types of maps, trails, pathways in your life that you're put on. For better or for worse. It's just, they're kind of out of your control. Now, what you do on that map and how you react to the things and sequences of events around you is, yes, certainly up to you. But the map itself you're put there for it. But there comes a point where we become solely responsible for our own journey. For some people, it's 18, they get kicked out of their house and they have to go be an adult and survive and be responsible solely for themselves in the form of providing their own shelter and food and insurance and all those types of things that maybe their parents or family used to provide as they were legally responsible to do so. But there is a point where you are responsible for your journey. You are responsible for what map you choose to use to navigate this thing we call life and our journey in it. And this encompasses way more than just our career, our education. This is, our relationships, our own personal growth journey. Certainly you are not the same person at 25 as you will be at 65 or 75 or even 35 or even 30. Like these short spurts of growth that you would go through, that you're not the same person. And as such, using this analogy, your map changes. But on the other hand, and what she's alluding to in this is occasionally, and I have probably found myself in this situation. You find yourself not where you want to be, right? We've probably all had these kind of aha wake up moments where you kind of sit back and you realize, I don't know where the last 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 or 20 years went, but I am not where I thought I would be. I had these grand plans as a 20-year-old or as an 18-year-old or a fresh graduate from college or high school, whatever, of where I would be, these 5 years, 10 years, 20 years later from now, or when I met my spouse or the kids we were going to have. And, right, you had these plans and expectations on your life, for the people around you that you love, for your career, all those types of things. And you have this moment of, I'm not there. And what Jenna, I think, is trying to allude to is not necessarily due to lack of ability, lack of skill, lack of effort. It's that you're on the wrong map. You're allowing somebody else's map to influence your journey, where you could have easily been on this path where you're hiking the Himalayas. Somebody puts you on this path where you're in the Sahara Desert, and you're ill-equipped just by your nature to handle being in the Sahara Desert versus the Himalayas. Right? They're two completely different environments, and you need to prepare for each of them completely different, and how you survive in those two different environments is absolutely contrary to each other. Antarctica versus the sub-Saharan desert, like, they don't mix. If you prepare for one, you'll die. If you prepare for Antarctica and you end up in the sub-Saharan desert, you ain't going to live, and vice versa. And that's what she's leading to. If you're not where you want to be, take a step back and ask yourself, am I following my journey that I want to be, the things I know I need to do to get where I want to be, or I am on somebody else's map and doing the things either they're telling me to do, but for those reasons that are not necessarily aligned with me. Now, you see a lot of this, or I guess not a lot of this, but this happens with parents. They're like, I want you to be a doctor, or because I'm a lawyer, you're going to be a lawyer, or even I served in the Navy and you're going to serve in the Navy, or I retired from the Marine Corps, so, you're going to join the Marine Corps. And there are aspects of that where you have those examples that influence it. Doesn't necessarily mean you're on the wrong path, but there are occasions where it absolutely means that, whether by your parental control or whatever else is happening, you are on the wrong path for you. Like maybe, your doctor father says you're going to be an optometrist because that's what I did. And it's a great career. It's prestigious, and, you earn decent money to provide for your family. But in your heart, you're like, man, I've always wanted to, pick it, like open my own motorcycle mechanic auto shop type of thing. You're like, that's my passion. That's what I want to do. But you spent, you went with your wishes because whatever, your parents pay your college and you go that route, and it's the path of least resistance. And, years later you wake up and you're like, I don't even like being an optometrist. Like, I can do it. It pays the bills, but man, I kind of hate it. It's boring. Or, pick your example versus, I love getting my hands dirty and turning wrenches and researching motorcycles and keeping up with all the latest technology and or even, going to races and, whatever that is, that you're on that wrong path. And I want to encourage you right now, no matter where you are at in your life. If you are a high school student listening to this, very doubtful, but possible. If you are a middle-aged businessman or woman that's listening to this, and all of a sudden you kind of take that step back and you're like, man, what have I been doing here? What path am I on? Whose map am I following? Is it my map that will get me where I want to go? Is it putting me on the path to reach my desires, whether that be family, career, money, vacation homes, whatever that is for you, donating to charities, serving in your church? Is that the path that you're on based on your own map? Or is that something that you've been put on by somebody else's map? Or you're following somebody else's map just because it's easier or it's less risky? We won't even get into the risk part of this for this conversation. But this becomes, again, this self-awareness and this recognition of whose map are you following? Because we all have one, whether we consciously think about it or not. I can look back and at points in my life where I've had options. I've had forks in the road, per se, trailheads that I can either take the one going down the mountain or the one going up the mountain. And I've chosen, for various reasons, one way or another, to take those different paths. But I can pretty truthfully say I've been on my own path for pretty much most of my life. Yes, absolutely. There were points in my life that my parents put me on a path. One, because I was too stupid to know any better, and taking some sort of action is better than taking no action. And, certainly they were legally responsible for me up until I was 18. So they were required to do that, or at least encourage me to help figure out my own path by offering suggestions and based on their experiences and past failures and successes and all those types of things, which you should do too for your children to set them up for success. But you cannot ever sacrifice their own journey for your comfort and your fear, or whatever that is that may cause you to want to keep them on your path that you've selected for them, or your map. There is a point where you have to give them control, supply them with the tools, the abilities, the analytical thinking and the decision-making abilities in order to develop their own path and get on their own map for all the potential pitfalls that may be in store for them one way or another. But they're all learning experiences just like anything else. And better to do it while you're young than when you're older and figure all this out. But if you are in that situation where you are older, you've been on somebody else's path for a really long time, and you're like, man, I don't even know what my path is anymore. I don't even know what my map looks like, right? Am I going into the mountains? Am I going through the woods? Is it taking me over streams and rivers? Like, what does this look like for me? And, this is where you really need to step back and say, well, what do I want? What does my life look like in 5 years? What would really be fulfilling for me if I'm able to do X, Y, and Z 10 years from now, 6 months from now, next month? And is the path that you're currently on something that you put yourself on? Were you influenced by some other external force, whether on purpose or inadvertently, circumstantially? Or are you there because it is getting you through the steps that you need to go through in order to reach that summit or cross that divide, whatever that is on your, with using the map analogy type of lingo. So yeah, I would highly encourage you to look at that and kind of think through that process and what that looks like for you. And is the trailhead that you're on right now, the map that you're following as you're folding it and unfolding it, is it taking you where you want to go in your business, in your relationships, in your community, in your church, spiritually, all those types of things, with your kids, absolutely, with your friends? Or are they disconnected from each other? That one is pulling you off where you should be, or vice versa. The one's keeping you somewhere where you shouldn't be. Make sense? I hope you really consider this. If you need to listen to this again, really, and if you need to, write it down, take notes, make a list so you can really kind of dissect this, because this can absolutely be overwhelming, especially if you kind of wake up in that moment of like, what have I been doing? Spinning wheels or trucking down the wrong direction, like the classic Dumb and Dumber. This comes to my head, right? Where I forget Lloyd or what's the other one's name? Harry, goes to sleep. They're traveling to the Rockies and he gets on, in the middle of the night and travels 8 hours in the wrong direction, right? So they were on the kind of the wrong thing and that whole thing. And that was that emergency moment in Fallout, but totally sidetracked on that with Dumb and Dumber. Okay. So the point being, I'll read Jenna Kutcher, I'll read it again. Maybe you haven't gotten to where you wanted to go because you're working off of someone else's map. Analyze, think about whose map are you running off of? Whose map are you consulting to get you in the direction and the results that you want in your life? Cool? All right. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe, and shares are fantastic. And I'll talk to you soon, no matter where you're at in the world. Have a fantastic afternoon. Bye.